morning, friends. It's Tea with Jess. I am your host, Jess. This morning, we're going to be talking with my dear friend, Buck Cochran, who's one of the founding members of Peacehaven Community Farm just up the road in Alamance County, North Carolina. Peacehaven is a farm, so they grow vegetables and they grow flowers, but it's also a residential facility for adults living with disabilities. And in addition to growing fruits and vegetables, they grow community there. It's an opportunity for people to come and learn alongside with people with disabilities, and I'm really excited for this conversation and for you to learn from what Buck has to share with us today. So enjoy our conversation, and I'll see you next week. Hello, Buck.
Hello, Jess. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Well, I'm so glad that you're here with me today on Tea with Jess. And so I'll open with the question I ask all the folks that I interview, which is, tell me about your current call. What are you doing right now in your ministry?
Okay. Well, my current call is at a nonprofit that I helped to start almost 13 years ago. And it's called Peacehaven Community Farm. And it is a housing community that is set up for adults with intellectual disabilities, that is set on a working, community-supported, sustainable farm. So the folks that live there and the folks that volunteer there get to participate in all the activities of the farm, helping out with the gardening, but more importantly, the community part, working with people who come from the larger community to help with the gardening projects and to have a chance to be with people with disabilities and work beside them and learn from them and really build relationships. My call is rooted in a long journey I've had with folks with disabilities, which includes having a child with a disability. Mm-hmm. And that really is one of the things that both prompted me to really be interested in this kind of community ministry, but really also kind of put me on a path of ministry to begin with. I had started out my professional vocational life in the military. I was a naval officer, and then I got out of the Navy, had a young family, and went into the corporate world and worked in the corporate world for a number of years before I went back to seminary. And it was really this experience of having a child with a disability that led me back to wanting to pursue theological education and some kind of ministry. When I went back to seminary, I really didn't know exactly what was going to be on the other side of that, but I felt such a strong call to that. And I knew something was on the other side. I was hoping something was on the other side, and went to seminary, and then came back, had a call at a local church in Greensboro, Westminster Presbyterian Church, wonderful church community in Greensboro, but then left there to start Peacehaven. And to me, I guess I'll share that it's kind of ironic in some ways and maybe a little counterintuitive, but I feel like this call, which is, and when we talk about call, we're always talking about calls to ministry, calls to churches. This call to Peacehaven was, without question, the clearest, strongest call I've ever had in my life, even though it wasn't to a church, but this call to be able to try to start this community and see what would happen. And it was with a lot of uncertainty, but I draw some comfort from, it seems like lots of examples in the Bible of folks who were called to things who thought, I'm not sure you've got the right person. So that was kind of the genesis of Peacehaven, but we've been doing it for 13 years. And it's just been an amazing experience for me and a great time of learning and growth in my own life, both personally and professionally and spiritually, I think, in many ways. So,
if you don't mind, Buck, tell me more about what specifically about having a child with a disability led you to pursue theological education. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's been a real important one for me. And having a child with a disability becomes an experience that I think resets you as a person. And it certainly kind of made me think about my faith in a radically different way. And really thinking about really think I started reading the Gospels in a different way. And I think a lot of the words that Jesus spoke started landing on me in a much different way. Having a child who the world considers to be broken and of less value. And I think consistently that those are the folks that Jesus is advocating for. So it was a chance for me really, I think, to experience that gospel message in a way that I never really had the chance to understand it. And I don't want to in any way characterize my situation as, I'm marginalized, or I'm at the bottom, the margins of our society. But for me, it was just a taste of what that might be like through the eyes of a child who was really experiencing that. And it really opened me up to people with disabilities and the places they struggled in our communities, the places that they struggled, sadly, sometimes to connect with church and church communities. We experienced that as a young family. I mean, church was even before I went to seminary. I mean, church was such an important part of our life as a family. And then all of a sudden, to have a child that just didn't fit in, and we felt like this place that should be a place of respite and comfort, and was not that. And so that always was a little concerning to me, and really made me think hard about, what is the role the church can play for people with disabilities. And I think about the struggle that folks with disabilities have to connect with all parts of their community and society. They can lead once they graduate from high school at 21 or 22. They can live such isolated lives. It's incredible. And so I think at its most basic level, the mission of Peacehaven is really kind of bringing people together, much like the mission of the church, to bring people together, to be able to learn from each other. And when you bring people together, it's how you grow together, whether it's growing in your faith or in growing in all these different ways we can grow as people. So
yeah. I think it is really interesting. I think people with disabilities are sort of the one group of people that are traditionally marginalized that the church still doesn't seem to consider beyond like a wheelchair ramp.
Yeah, and it takes more than a wheelchair ramp to welcome somebody.
It really does.
I'm not. Wheelchair ramps are great, and you need them.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but it's more than some of the physical access issues that we kind of think are going to be the things that open the church's doors wide to people. But certainly having a child with a disability is the thing that opened me up to that, and then all of a sudden let me become a part of a community that has just enriched my lives in ways that I could have never imagined.
Mm-hmm. And so with that too, why did you make Peacehaven a farm and not like a church plant or something? Like what's the deal with agriculture? Because that's how I got introduced to you.
Yeah.
We're like, there's this really rad farm, you're going to want to be a part of it. So tell me about what about that, either agricultural metaphor or just like your life practice, like what made it a farm?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and just to backtrack a little bit, I mean, having a child with a disability, I became really interested in, I mean, when you have a young child as a parent with a disability, you really are kind of thinking, okay, what's down the road and what's going to be available for them when they're adults, and what supports and communities are they going to need. So early on, even when our child was very young, I was thinking, real interested in communities and, what are the things out there for folks when they're adults. And one of the things, and I became greatly interested in, was LARSH communities that we've talked about. And so I visited many LARSH communities, the community in DC. There's one in Jacksonville, Florida I had a chance to visit. And so when I was really discerning this call to starting a community, it was really kind of based on that idea of LARSH, if not even trying to do a LARSH community. But the group of folks that kind of came together to out of Westminster to start Peacehaven, the other couple, Tim and Susan Elliott, it was Susan who said, I think there would be something really special if we could combine this passion you have for creating a community, if we combined it with agriculture, gardening, this kind of family farm setting, and if we brought these two together. Uh, and my reaction to that was, well, I guess that sounds like a good idea. And it sounded like a good idea, but I had no idea of what the impact would have of rooting this community of people in this agriculture setting, and what it would mean to us, even short term, because we started out right when the Great Recession of 2008. So all of a sudden we found that we had this great piece of land, but really no funding to do anything with it. So we knew, well, we can begin farming it. And it was a way to start building community. And so I think the wonderful thing about bringing combining agriculture in this community setting is the way that the appeal that gardening and farming and being in this setting has to the larger community to come be a part of that. And then we really get to connect them with the disability folks with disabilities and start building those relationships. I don't know, if I'm honest, I've ever thought about it being a church plant per se. I mean, I always knew there would be a really strong spiritual component to it. And I know there's some folks that have done some like the Farm Church over in Durham, and there's some really innovative, cool things that are going on. It's been kind of a tricky, to be honest, it's been kind of a tricky line that we walked. Nearly all of the folks who've been involved at Peacehaven, both our residents, who we call our core members, and staff and volunteers, there's a strong spiritual faith component to their call to Peacehaven that they're living out there. I don't know. It's kind of neat to have, for it, in some ways, for it not to be a dedicated church plant, and then for us to build all these great relationships with all these church communities in the area, which, for us is just this great gift. And it's a great gift for our residents too, to be able to experience all these different churches and the opportunities. One of our core members, Jeff Pagari, our good friend, one of the things that we experienced after we opened the house was they were visiting lots of different churches, just to kind of, meet people and go different places. And every Monday I would get a call from the church secretary they had visited to say, okay, Jeff Pagari wants to join our church.
Every Monday, every church. I can see this happening. I can visualize it so clearly.
Which I thought, that is just the coolest thing, that there is no church community that he doesn't want to be a part of. And what that says about both Jeff and the church communities that they were being welcomed at. I thought that was just always a really wonderful thing. So I don't know. It's it's been a really interesting. The faith part of it has been a really interesting thing. We certainly want to support it for our core members, who are all amazingly faithful, deeply spiritual people, who are my teachers in my life of faith. So
that, I think that brings up another really good question, which we sort of talked about, how difficult it is for churches to be inclusive with people with disabilities, and to do ministry alongside them instead of sort of for them, and this constant othering that happens. So I'm wondering, what are the top 3 strategies that you can think of that would allow churches to be more welcoming and inclusive of people with disabilities? And I know it's a hard question too, because it's so broad when we talk about the community of disability. We alluded to physical disability earlier with a wheelchair ramp, but there's a whole spectrum, right? So
and this is not, I'm not being critical of churches. It's not that churches are the only folks that make mistakes trying to welcome folks with disabilities. And I think sometimes there's kind of an educational component to it as well. Just educating folks about, okay, things, if we have people in our worship that there may be some behaviors that aren't normal to our worship setting. Here's why there's value in that for us as a church community. So I think sometimes there can be an educational component, and I think that can start at all different levels of churches. Often the best place to start is in some of the children ministries and youth ministries. And I think that, really helping to educate and kind of be a place where those folks really feel welcome and folks understand the importance of welcoming folks into those communities and what it means. I think kind of the educational piece of it, I'm not really articulating that well. And I don't know exactly kind of the best way that you would do things like that, but I know there are different curriculums that denominations have around how you, ways that you can do that. I think also, the other thing is, and this one is can be a little more challenging, but it's one thing that we try to do at Peacehaven is really putting folks with disabilities into roles that you might not expect to see them. As a teacher, maybe as a person in helping to lead worship. All of a sudden, the world, sees this person who they don't expect to be, have that capacity, doing something that is really wonderful. And it changes the way that folks think about disability and the gifts and talents they have to offer. And I've got one more great answer for you, right?
Just one more. Yeah.
One more. I don't know, Jess. I think the kind of lastly, the thing is, really being able to listen to folks and making a concerted effort to listen to families and to listen to individuals who are struggling to connect and figure out ways to do that. And trying to build those relationships. And that's just kind of old fashioned person to person stuff. But it's probably the thing that's of the greatest value. It's the thing that probably means the most to our work in ministry at Peacehaven is, building those relationships one at a time. But I'm often intrigued at the power of having folks with disabilities in roles that folks just don't expect to see them in, and how it really changes the way folks think about folks. And we do that all the time at Peacehaven. We put our core members in leadership roles. That's one of the things about the food donation program we had talked about, and partnering with that with Alamance this summer, and really putting the core members kind of as the leaders of that program and driving the program for Peacehaven. I think that says a lot about them and really kind of changes the way folks think about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I know for me personally, I love, not to tokenize her, but I love the model of Temple Grandin, who, is a person with a disability. She's a woman who has autism. Her book is actually, look at that, right here on my shelf.
Which one?
Her first one.
Oh yeah, Animals.
Right.
But
I so admire and respect this woman who was born with autism, and because of that can understand animal pathologies in a totally different way than people who don't have autism, and especially for a particular brand of autism.
Yeah. One of the things that we've really stolen from large communities is this notion that God has given us all gifts, and how can we think of how Peacehaven can be a place to kind of reveal that gift and put it to good use. And the church is the exact same way. That's the church's mission, to take gifts from folks and be able to put them in work and in the community, doing church community and large community.
And to understand that even the term disability is such a limiting term, because it implies that there's a lack. When in reality, in many ways, there's an abundance rather than a lack.
There's an abundance, and there's insights and learnings and things. I could just write pages and pages and pages about the things I've learned and how I've grown, and which I knew I'd never had the opportunity to do if I didn't have a friendship with Jeff or Molly or Ann or Jake or Ben. I mean, it's remarkable. It's just, it is stunning how how you can grow. But the language is tough, and we've struggled with that at Peacehaven. What's the right language? How do we disability and we really kind of roll through that different phases of that. We had an interesting experience a few years ago when we were talking about. We said we need to revisit it. Let's talk about it as a staff and get together and what the language we're using and trying to be consistent. And so we met and talked and debated. And finally somebody said, maybe we should ask the core members. And so Jake was coming by and we said, Jake, we're talking about language and should we be using disability or special needs? And, what do you want to be called? And he said, Jake. We said, okay. And that's just an example of the way they teach you and kind of guide you to the places that you need to be as a person, which is so wonderful.
And that speaks to so many things that are going on in our larger society as well right now, in terms of the way we clump people of color as a term into this category. And then there are subclumps like Asian, and it's like, no. And I think what Jake modeled, Jake being a member of the core community at Peacehaven, right, is I am, right, I contain multitudes, to quote Walt Whitman, right? I am Jake. That is what I am first and foremost. And then all these other things that you will use to describe me are not actually as inherent to my identity as my Jakeness.
I think there's such a parallel there. We as an organization, we've been thinking a lot about race and racial justice and those issues and what is our call as an organization at all levels to be thinking about that and acting upon it. And one of our staff meetings last week, I guess, we're trying to as a staff decide, what do we need to be doing? What conversations do we need to be having? And so we made some plans for it. And then one of our home life leaders, one of our folks who live in the house with our core members, said, we talk about this all the time in the house. She says it's as natural as talking about what are we having for dinner.
Yep.
And I thought, God, why can't the rest of the world be that way, where it is so natural and inviting in a way, and to be able to have those conversations. So, to me, I think it's another one of those places where there are teachers on how to do it. And so maybe I don't need to download the latest curriculum on how to discuss it. Maybe I should just get the core members to help us with the discussion. And it's those things that just over and over again are part of our lives that, we get to experience, that have been these places of great growth, I think, certainly for me, and I think for all of us.
And so I think it's a very powerful model for how we can reframe our society, and a teaching hub.
Yeah, and I think that's our call. I mean, we're doing housing and agriculture and food and all these things, but I think at the most basic level, we can almost be this demonstration plot for what it means to be a community. And hopefully in some small ways kind of model that for the larger community, so that the folks that come to Peacehaven to volunteer or to whatever have a chance to experience that and maybe scratch their head a little bit and say, maybe there's something about this that's hopefully authentic. And
and so that's kind of my next question is, what ways for people who might be watching this, how can they get involved with the work that you're doing and with the ministry that you've cultivated there? Yeah,
well, we tell folks that our name is Peacehaven Community Farm, and we say the most important word in that name is community. And Peacehaven would not be Peacehaven without the larger community that is involved in all the different ways that you can get involved. As everyone knows, currently in the midst of our global pandemic,
Yes.
which is completely antithetical to the way we think about ourselves and the way we like to engage the community, is so tough right now, and for the church too. I mean, it's so challenging. I mean, it's you want to come together and be together, and it's just a really challenging time to do that. We folks with the folks that we serve, um, and I don't know if it's folks that we serve, the folks that we're with, all are part of a vulnerable population. I mean, it's really frightening right now. If you look at the some of the statistics, a person with intellectual disability is 4 times more likely to get COVID-19.
Buck, this is the first time that I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I'm hearing that.
Wow.
That's ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Well, and they're twice as likely to die from it.
Oh my gosh.
And there's all kinds of different reasons for that, but it's really made us think hard about the ways that we can make sure Peacehaven remains a safe and healthy place for the folks who are living there now, which is mean that we've closed the campus off in a way that is just not the way that we think about Peacehaven and folks coming to volunteer and be a part of it. And that part of it has been really hard. There's been a couple of good things that have happened from it. And we're just watching the situation and trying to figure out when we can start bringing volunteers back. And that's one of the best ways to get involved at Peacehaven, is to volunteer and to come out and to bring your gift to share with Peacehaven, whether it's as a gardener or working with our folks in some way. And so our volunteer programs are currently suspended until things settle down a little bit with coronavirus. But the volunteering piece is just essential to Peacehaven. I mean, we need the help on the farm. Farm's a lot of work, and our poor farm manager. We were talking to him today. We said, "Are you going to survive?" Because he's working from sun up to sundown trying to keep things going, and we're all trying to pitch in. One of the kind of cool things that has happened, and we've seen it even in this short time at Peacehaven, is the core members and the folks at the house have really decided that the farm and our farm manager needs our help. So they are out there with him every day, helping with all the many tasks that he has. But I mean, but to get back to your question, we're kind of in this period where it's tough for us to kind of engage people
directly.
Yeah. And we hope that changes quickly, but we've got to watch it and monitor it just like everybody else is. We are looking for ways to use technology like this, a Zoom call, to be able to invite people into the lives of the core members. They're really very, they love doing this just like we love doing it. And so perhaps there's some way that we could engage different groups of people and have them a chance to meet, because our folks are always out in the community, whether it's at churches or different activities involved. And so that's a real loss for them right now, not to be able to do that and to be more kind of limited to a lot of the activities they can do. But hopefully it'll open back up before long, and we can have great folks like the folks at Alamance out to help. And you guys, Alamance Presbyterian Church was one of the first groups to come out and volunteer at Peacehaven when we started. And we've just got a long, great history of your church community helping and volunteering, especially the youth, who've been wonderful. So.
Yeah, we have pictures of, there's a beautiful kaboom playground at the Peacehaven site that under normal circumstances I think is open and inclusive to anybody who wants to come and play.
That's right.
And so if you have children and you ever want to take them to a cool playground, you can take them to Peacehaven. And the youth helped build that playground, and we have fabulous pictures of that all over our office.
I forgot about that.
So that was a really cool experience for them.
So we are very thankful for that relationship, and hopefully things will change soon and we can
Yeah.
get folks out. So
Cool. Well, what's bringing you joy and hope right now? So we can't have
yeah,
volunteers. Things are kind of
yeah,
different in every way imaginable. But what's
yeah.
helpful for you in all of this?
Uh, this it's been really hard. As you know, we did make a decision for our core members to go home for a couple of months while we were trying to reconfigure the campus, um, to be able for them to live safely at Peacehaven. So we've just had our core members back on campus for the past 2 weeks, and uh, that's brought me great joy. That's
Mm-hmm.
brought everybody great joy. Uh, but in some ways that have been just really neat surprises. And I think part of it is the the joy in the affirmation of what it means to the core members and what it means to us to be back together,
Mm-hmm.
and for
Yeah.
that uh, uh, community to be kind of back in touch, and to see the first core member who came back. We kind of made a big deal about the core members come back. We had balloons and all kinds of stuff. His mom drove him up, and he pulled up in his van, and I don't think the car had even quite stopped before his door flung open, and he hopped out of the car, and I swear I could see his smile behind his mask. I mean, and his mom said, the whole way over here, he was saying, "I'm going home."
Mm-hmm.
And we may be even more of a family farm right now than we've ever been. And it's just really, how they're working together. I mean, that's just given me such great joy, and really made me hopeful about what's going to happen.
Good. That's
Yeah.
so. Any sort of final truth nuggets you want to share, Buck, as we close this conversation?
Truth nuggets. I would say that just personally, in thinking about faith journeys and calls and opportunities, and as folks are thinking about places that they're being called to, for me to have the last 13 years of my life at Peacehaven. I mean, a lot of times folks will say, Buck used to be a minister. And I usually don't try to correct them.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you think of ministry being as a called pastor in a church, and
Yep.
and I think of this as ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as I've kind of gone through my life in this last 13 years, which have been probably the most intense period of learning and growth of my whole life, which I'm so grateful for, because you don't often get an opportunity like that kind of in this stretch. But I guess the truth nugget of these opportunities we have as people of faith, to look at these places around us that where we can learn and grow and serve, and just the opportunity it provides us as followers to do the things we need to do. So that's not much of a nugget.
I think that's a great nugget.
I don't know, Jess.
Well, you're a lovely, humble human, Buck, so it would not surprise me that you wouldn't see that as a nugget. But would you mind, Buck, kind of praying us out?
Oh, I would love to. And I don't think I've been asked to do that on a Zoom call. So what a treat.
Good. Well, I'm glad you can share your prayer gifts with the world.
Thank you. Okay. Well, let's share a prayer together.
Okay.
Gracious and loving God, we do give you thanks for our lives, for the way that you bind us together with all these wonderful connections and places we have with people in our community, the way that you teach us, the way that you allow us to grow, the way that you allow us to be your people, the different places where we can share your love and let it be known to especially folks who may not have a chance to experience as much as others. So we give thanks for all of that. I do give thanks for Jess and her ministry and the ministry of Alamance, and ask that you continue to bless that community in their work in their community. So thank you for this time, and thank you for your son. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Buck.